Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to some post-Italian Grand Prix qualifying waffle. Hope you're all having a lovely weekend so far. Straight in with a super chat. Thank you very much to Sad Mariners fan. It says, Science pole at Monza. This is the best quali in F1 history. Max is going to win by 32 seconds tomorrow. So optimistic, excited, and then back to reality there. Thank you very much, Sad Mariners fan, for your super chat. And hey to everybody in chat as well. Hey to Valentine, to Lewis, to the Hatbrus, to Dell, to James Rich as well. Good to see everybody in there. Lots to talk about today, of course. Great qualifying. Always enjoy qualifying. I can't remember the last time I didn't enjoy qualifying, although I've got some stuff to say on ATA a little bit later, which it's not negative. It's just something that I kind of picked up on today while I was watching it, so we will do that one. But super quickly, I want to go through a very quick qualifying wrap up with the order and things like that. So it is not Max Verstappen on pole position as I predicted on Thursday. It is Carlos Sainz for Ferrari at Monza. The scenes, how very exciting for Ferrari. Great to see them doing well on home soil. Very happy to see Ferrari 1 and 3. Max Verstappen in second, Charles Leclerc in third. 0.067 separating the top 3, nothing between them. Absolutely brilliant session. Sainz actually took pole right at the end. It was Leclerc who took pole, then Verstappen took that away, and then Carlos Sainz snatched it as well, all on their final run. So really good stuff. George Russell 4th, Sergio Perez in 5th, and Alex Albon in 6th. Great stuff again from Alex Albon. Oscar Piastri 7th, out qualifying Lando Norris, who was 9th. Lewis Hamilton in between them in 8th. Fernando Alonso only 10th. Yuki Tsunoda 11th, Liam Lawson 12th, very good performance from him. 13th from Nico Hulkenberg, 14th for Bottas, 15th for Sargent. Zhou was 16th, Gasly 17th, Ocon 18th, miserable day for Alpine, 19th for Magnussen, and in last place was Lance Stroll in 20th, well off the pace, really, even nearly a second off his teammate, I think 8/10. We'll get into that a little bit later, but it is Carlos Sainz on pole for tomorrow. We have a poll in chat. I'm simply asking, who do you think will win tomorrow's Italian Grand Prix? Sainz, Verstappen, Leclerc, or other? At the moment, it's pretty one-sided. 74% think that Verstappen will win tomorrow. 19% say Sainz, 2% say Leclerc, and 6% say other. I've been intrigued who those others are. Maybe some love for a Russell win or a Perez win or maybe an Albon with a shock win. You never know. Daniel Ricciardo won here a few years ago, so it's always possible. A Gasly win here, of course, as well. Vettel back in 2008. So, it can happen. Surprise wins. You never know. You never know in Formula One. But, yeah, I think, like a lot of you, I'm leaning towards a Verstappen win tomorrow. But really enjoyable session. And it's good. It's kind of good. Like, I think even Max Verstappen fans will probably say, they'd like their driver on pole and they'd probably still be confident for tomorrow. But ultimately, having those Ferraris in the mix and having good pace sets us up for a good first part of the race tomorrow. Even if Max disappears after lap 5, 6, 7, whatever, at least we've got something at the start tomorrow which could give us a bit of excitement. Of course, that Ferrari is quite slippery in a straight line, so you never know. It might be able to fend off that Red Bull for a little bit, but I can't help but feel that once that DRS is activated, that Red Bull is going to breeze straight past. But it's great for Ferrari. It's really good to see. And I did write a stat down, which is interesting, just to kind of give you an idea, because generally speaking this season, as I'm sure you know, or certainly in the last few races, the last 5 races, it's been that the Red Bull has been much better in race trim than it is in qualifying. And actually, from the last 5 qualifying sessions, despite their dominance, Red Bull have only had 2 pole positions, which is still very nice, I'm sure. And they've won all the races, and that's what really matters, but only had 2 poles in the last 5 races. Maybe shows that the field over 1 lap has closed that gap a little bit. Or it could be, if you want to be a bit more pessimistic, that Red Bull just put their focus on Sunday because that's all that really matters. And they know that if they're not on pole, they're going to be somewhere at the front regardless. So it could be the latter, could be the former. If you want to be positive, everyone's closing the gap. If you want to look at it from a pessimistic point of view, Red Bull just focusing on Sunday, which makes sense, I think. That's where the points are, isn't it? So that's the way I view it. But it's still great to see Ferrari. We're very, very happy to see them in the mix for tomorrow's Grand Prix as well. But podium for Carlos Sainz, do we think, chat? I'd like to see Carlos up there tomorrow. I think I heard a stat somewhere that there's only 2 drivers in Ferraris in the last 40 years who have gone through a season for Ferrari without a podium. So it'd be good to see Carlos up there tomorrow. And I think, to be fair, looking at race pace, I'd be surprised if one of them aren't up there on Sunday. I think Perez could, if he keeps it clean, could come through to take a podium, but I wouldn't be at all surprised to see Sainz or Leclerc up there. But I'd love to see Carlos get his first of the season. But a Ferrari on that incredible Monza podium is always special. Whether it's first, second, third, doesn't matter. Well, it does to the tifosi, of course, but watching from home, it doesn't matter. It's just nice to see the scenes up there, and then the track invasion as well. Great scenes at the end. So, Will Chan says, will Ferrari bottle it tomorrow? Or when will Ferrari bottle it tomorrow? That's the other thing, isn't it? They've got to get through stress. They've got to go through pit stops first, so they need to hope that it's all pretty straightforward. Alfie Al says, so conflicted. Yeah, Max not on pole. Oh, it's a Ferrari. Yeah, it's Carlos. Yeah, fair enough. I'm just looking at the grid as well for tomorrow. I think we've got a really nice mix as well, because you've got Sergio Perez. I feel like saying again, a little bit out of position in 5th place. So, he's got to come through. Could be a formality, but he's still got to do it. George Russell is ahead of Alex Albon, but Alex Albon is really slippery. So if Perez goes through and Russell's got to fend off Albon, that's going to be interesting. Piastri, Hamilton, Norris and co. in behind Albon. It's going to be tough for them to overtake, so that's going to be a fun battle. They should be close for most of the race. Strategy could be really important tomorrow there. You've got Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson together on the grid. I think that's exciting. A lot at stake there potentially for Liam if he wants to try and one-up his teammate for the 2nd race weekend in a row on a Sunday. And then you've got, you'd probably say I'm mad when I say this, but when you look at the season, I'm probably wrong. When you look at where that Williams should be, you could possibly argue Logan Sargent's a little bit out of position in that car, or for the car rather than him personally, if you follow what I'm saying. So maybe tomorrow, really quick car in a straight line. We might see some overtaking from Logan. Would love to see him get his first point. We shall see. And then we've got to see what Lance Stroll can do from 20th on the grid. He's generally better on a Sunday than a Saturday. We've seen that throughout his career. That car is definitely quicker on paper than 20th. So I think we've got a good grid tomorrow. I think we have, and I'm looking forward to it. So enjoyable session, hopefully enjoyable race tomorrow. And it's the last European race of the season. I said it in the preview. I can't quite believe we're at that stage. I've seen a lot of people talking about this season dragging, but actually, I think it's flown by. Really, I feel like I'm in the minority with that statement sometimes, but I do feel like this season's gone pretty quickly. Sad Mariners fan says on Logan Sargent, Logan had a faster time in Q1 than Q2. He had a lot more pace. Yeah, just on Logan Sargent, while we're talking about him, it's not usually where I'd start on the stream, but we will go with it. Let's see what he said. So Logan Sargent said that he was down on his qualifying lap and so went all in at Parabolica, but he, quote, missed it. So I think he said missed it on the team radio, but that's... He's kind of down on his delta. He's looked at the Parabolica, gone, right, let's throw myself in there, see what we can do. It's not quite come off. If it had, then maybe he could have been higher. I just look at the times though. Did he have a quicker time in Q2? Because I think he actually, by a few hundreds he was quicker. 21.930 in Q1, 21.944 in Q2. Unless I'm reading the wrong. No, that's the wrong. That's Monza. So it's not massively, but there is a little bit more pace in there, I'm sure. And actually, Alex Albon, I know that he's making a big difference in that car, but 6-7 tenths between them, you've got to think there's got to be a couple more tenths in there at least for Logan. So you'd like to hope he'll find that tomorrow. I'd like to see him get a good result. And also, obviously, goes without saying, I want Liam Lawson to do really, really well. Really impressed with him today. Nice to start a bit further down the grid, actually. Liam Lawson today, only a couple of tenths off Yuki Tsunoda in Q2. Got through to Q2 for the first time in only his second race and was only 2 tenths off Yuki at the end. That, I think, is pretty impressive. I know he's had the whole weekend to kind of wind up to today, and then he's got tomorrow as well, but I think that's fantastic from Liam Lawson, given this is only his second race weekend, his first race weekend. There was rain in qualifying, which hampered him, and then today you've got the alternative tyre allocation as well. So in a normal weekend, maybe it'll be even closer than that, but I think that's a really solid performance from him as well. So well done to Lawson just while we're down that end of the grid. But that's true. Hard tyres, good point on Logan Sargent. Irene just saying there, harder on the quicker on the hards than on the mediums, so there's definitely more time in there. I keep forgetting it's the alternative allocation, even though I keep saying it, but there we go. But back towards the sharp end of the grid. Let me know in chat your thoughts on tomorrow's race, because I'd be intrigued as to how you think it's going to play out. A lot of you in the polls seem to think Max will breeze past, disappear, and that'll be that, as Sad Mariners fan said at the start, 30 seconds up the road or whatever it was. So it's possible. You could argue it's probable, given how this season has gone. But I think that Ferrari with the pace in a straight line, if it can get to turn one first, and Red Bull starts haven't been excellent this year. They have sometimes nailed it, and sometimes they've got it very wrong. So there is a possibility Leclerc could get in there. If you've got Sainz and Leclerc ahead of Verstappen, that might just give us a bit of a battle towards the front. I still think, sitting here today, looking at the season we've had, looking at the race pace of that Red Bull, although the Ferrari race pace wasn't bad either, to be fair, but looking at the race pace of that Red Bull, looking at the season as a whole, the fact that I wouldn't say they're not bothered that they didn't get pole, but they're not angry or disappointed or worried or frustrated. They're very much like, oh, well, never mind. But I think looking at all of that, I can see nobody but Max Verstappen winning tomorrow. But I hope we can have at least a fight for it. And that's not me taking digs at Max, because it's not that at all. It's just, it'd be nice to see a battle at the front at some stage this season. Even if in behind has been fantastic this year, it'd still be nice to see a bit of a battle at the sharp end again. So we'll see how we go tomorrow. But I do think Verstappen for the win. We'll do predictions properly a little bit later. Lewis says Max will sit behind Sainz and jump him in the pits. Could be the safest option. I guess it depends on that DRS though, doesn't it? And that's the other thing, I suppose, which is that we saw it in the F2, and I know it's a little bit different with F2 and F3, but even if Max breezes past under DRS, he's got to try and break that DRS down, hasn't he, before Sainz gets it and can close that gap down. So we could see a bit of DRS squabbling, but you might be right. Sit behind Sainz, look after your tyres, look after your car. Go for it. You know, pit, undercut him, safest option. We'll see. Alan says Ferrari will F it up. Fair enough. And Crazy Ninja says Turn 1 explosion. Very dramatic. And apparently Peter Windsor called this qualifying from analysis of P1 and P2. FP1 and FP2. Interesting. There you go. It's. I don't think anybody should have been surprised by Carlos Sainz on pole, given how he's been this weekend in terms of his pace. That wasn't a great surprise to me. So I could see why somebody with a lot more experience in F1, with respect to Peter, I'm not saying anything, he's much more experienced than most of us in Formula One. And the fact he's been, he's got feet on the ground or boots on the ground over there, he probably gets a lot more information as well. So I'm not surprised he's drawn that conclusion, given that Sainz was pretty rapid anyway. But it'll be interesting. Race will be about tyre degradation, says Cranky ? Have Ferrari got their deg under control? They struggled with that early season, didn't they? And at times throughout. So it kind of depends on what we're talking track temperature tomorrow. Because it's quite demanding on tyres, particularly on the left-hand side, because it doesn't look like it should be in some ways, but you've got the forces that go through through Parabolica and Curva Grande, and then you've got Grande. Sorry, Crofty's pronunciation. We've got Grande. I say Grande, but there you go. It's an accent thing. Not the best with them, as you know, and you may hear from my voice. Not the best with accents, but yeah, quite a lot of forces go through the tyres there, so that puts them through strain. But you've also got the traction out of the chicanes and the braking into them. You need that stability into the braking into the turn 1 and 2 chicane, and the traction on the exit. And you've got to have a good car that can manage the tyres through those super quick corners. So it'll be a factor, as it is at every race. But one thing I would say is Red Bull seemingly have looked after their tyres much better this year in races than Ferrari. I guess it's easier if you can control the pace out front. But it would be a concern for Ferrari, I suppose, because we have seen at times this season they've really struggled. So to answer the question directly and without, I wanted to go a little bit more into it, because I didn't want to just go, well, yeah, because it always is. But tyre deg is going to be a massive factor tomorrow. But I know that might not be the deciding factor. It is, I guess, my answer to that one. Really, yes, Ariana Grande. Chris B says Max is inevitable. Yeah, absolutely. And C64, last one on the bat at the front, says Max will tangle with Sainz at the first chicane and end up on his head. Scenes of 2021, of course. There you go. Irene doesn't like the Ferrari overalls. I'll be honest, I don't like the Ferrari livery this weekend. Controversial opinion, potentially. I don't know. Let me know what you think. I think if you're looking at special one-off liveries, Alfa Romeo have knocked it out the park this weekend, and Ferrari, they just sort of went, let's just stick some yellow on for a tribute. I'm not a massive fan of the Ferrari liveries. I will say it's better than last year's attempt. But I actually quite like the retro feel of the overalls. Race suits, whatever they're called. I quite like the retro vibe of them, so I'm going to disagree, but also I don't really like the livery. Full stop. But yeah, back to the track actions. So, yeah, George Russell up in 4th for Mercedes. Best they could do today. Lewis Hamilton didn't seem thrilled. I didn't see any reaction to whether or not there was an issue for Hamilton at all, or whether that is just the pace of the Mercedes. But George Russell late on, really great lap to hop ahead of Perez and Albon. That's a really fun fight tomorrow, isn't it? What can Sergio Perez do in that battle? Q2, we've done Q2, Q3. We've talked about that as well with the battle at the front. So there's nothing in there. So just everybody notice if there's anything there that's worth mentioning. Not really. Piastri out qualifying Lando Norris, I think, is a really solid result. Norris apparently felt that was basically the best he could have done in Q3. He was nearly knocked out in Q2, interestingly enough, but just avoided that elimination. But he reckons that's all he could have done in Q3. So ninth place. What was he? Couple of tenths of his teammate. I think Oscar Piastri would be thrilled with that. Norris probably not so much, but I hope there's better race pace in that car for tomorrow. That will be interesting as well. And McLaren are really fascinating to me at the moment. There, I know it comes down to maybe the specifics of certain tracks. You know, you've got this weekend similar to Spa in a sense. You've got the Kemmel Straight versus the Monza start-finish straights, and maybe it's not a track that suits them overly. We saw with the high downforce setup they went for at Belgium because they thought they were going to get the rain. It did rain a bit, but not enough that's costing them. Maybe there's an element of that. Maybe the car just isn't quick in a straight line, full stop. But I don't think 7th and 9th is a bad result when you consider where they were a few months ago, not even that long ago, to where they are now. So I think better race pace tomorrow, hopefully. But the driver I'm keeping the big eye on tomorrow is Alex Albon. I think he is going to be, if, as you guys are predicting with the poll and in the chat, if Max Verstappen pretty swiftly gets in the lead and disappears with it. I think Ted was saying in his notebook that there's kind of a two-tier race tomorrow, potentially, with Verstappen and Ferrari, or at least today, Verstappen and Ferrari, and then the rest of the field. Tomorrow it might be 3 with Verstappen, Ferrari, and then everybody else, or if Perez can get there, we'll see. But I think Albon really could make that interesting behind, because he's going to be so rapid in a straight line. We saw it in Canada. Cars just could not get past him. He fought well. He did a great job, and I think he could be on for a really decent result tomorrow. I'm not going to ask the question if he could finish in the points, because that'll upset people, because apparently that's wholly unacceptable to ask a question like that. Such as the internet, or people on the internet, but there you go. But I think he's going to be really entertaining tomorrow, and that's going to, as long as he's, make it sound like the Williams is slow. It's not, but as long as he's holding people at bay, we've got a really fun, close fight in there. So whatever happens at the front, I think that is where the next battle's going to be once Perez comes through, if he does come through. So I think Albon, I think I said it last week, Albon is probably probably the driver that's impressed me the most away from what Max Verstappen and Red Bull are doing, you know, at the front, Max Verstappen in particular, with this season. I think Alex Albon's been absolutely sensational. And I think James Vowles has said that he's on a long-term contract and they want to keep him long-term, but I think they're going to struggle to stop his head from turning if they can't give him a car that can consistently be challenging towards the sharp end. Because if a Red Bull comes knocking, whatever the history is there, if a Mercedes comes knocking or a Ferrari, I don't see how he says no. And he's got to be in that conversation for teams for maybe 2025 onwards. He's got to be. Do you know what? I'll throw this out there as well. What about Audi? You know, what about Audi? They're probably looking for drivers to fill those seats in 2025, so they're ready for 2026. Could that be an option for him? I think that would be absolutely a possibility. We'll do that another day. Audi. Not Aldi. It's my accent. I can't help it. When I worked at Aldi, everybody thought I was saying Aldi. When I talk about Audi, you all think I'm saying Aldi. And there's people there now going, they're all the same word. What are you on about? It's just the accent. I can't help it. It's, you know, I get a lot of stick for my accent. The Lincolnshire accent is crap. Mine's Lincolnshire mixed in with a load of other stuff for some reason. It's a terrible accent. There's nothing I can do about it. I'm not going to sit here speaking the Queen's English. Or the King. Is it the King's English? I suppose it's King's English now, isn't it? Yeah, I guess it is. But I'm not going to be doing that, because there you go. So I'll tell you what. We'll say he's driving for Lidl. There you go. Really mix it up. Really, really mix it up. Yes, anyway, back to the point. Alex, I hate you lot sometimes, but I love you as well. Alex Albon tomorrow could be really, really making that interesting in behind. And I think, like I said earlier, some cars out of position, people coming through. It's going to be a lot of fun. And I think we're in for a good race. I know that there are some people who look at the winner and it's Verstappen again or whatever, and that means that the race was dull. But we've had some great racing in behind this season. It's been so exciting, so unpredictable as well. One weekend, you've got Ferrari up there threatening pole and then getting themselves on the podium. Another weekend, it's Mercedes. Another weekend, it's Aston Martin. It's McLaren. It's so much fun in behind, and I think we've actually had a better season than maybe people would say the championship shows. Definitely. Lincolnshire sausages are the best. Well, actually, no. Oh, no, I can't say that. I'm from Lincolnshire. Yes, Lincolnshire sausages are the best. Nothing beat them. Cranky, I agree. 100%. I can't say any more. I'm not allowed to. I can't answer any other way. I'm from Lincolnshire, I'm afraid. I would be kicked out the county, which wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, but I'd be kicked out the county if I said anything else about Cumberland sausages or anything. So there you go. Let's move on from sausage talk. This is supposed to be a waffle, but we're on sausages now for some reason, but there you go. Keep your comments coming in chat. I will read them out. That's the whole point. If you're new to the channel, that is what these are. These are F1 fans hanging around together on a Saturday afternoon, talking nonsense about Formula One and end up where we end up. Sometimes we can end up at yogurt, sometimes it's sausages, other times we actually stick to F1, which is a rarity. But come to you throughout for that one. I do want to just say something quickly as well on the alternative tyre allocation. I said last time we had this that I didn't think it made that much of a difference to the session, really, from our point of view. And it felt like the weekend was building, or the session was building a little bit, because you're not as quick in Q1 and you're not as quick in Q2, and then suddenly everything comes together in Q3. But I for some reason today, I really struggled with Q1 and Q2. Not I could watch it. I'm perfectly capable of using my eyes, but it just didn't get me as excited as Q3 did. And I can't help but feel that maybe, because to me the point of qualifying, and I'm absolutely adamant I'm not alone on this. I'm sure many of you will agree. The point of qualifying is low fuel, softest tyres, drive as fast as you can for an hour, basically, isn't it? For you do your laps in Q1, laps in Q2, laps in Q3. And that should be what qualifying is to me. That is what it is. So I think part of it is that it just doesn't feel like qualifying in Q1 and Q2. And it's sort of the same a little bit with the shootout thing they do for the sprints, when they fuel up and they go round and round and round on the hard tyre or the medium tyre, or whatever they're using in those sessions. And it just doesn't quite feel like qualifying. It's not that it's not enjoyable. I like low fuel, soft tyres, flat out, engine cranked up. Obviously, they can't play with engine modes now, but you know what I mean. And that's what qualifying is to me. So I don't think it makes a massive difference to us, really, but it's just a little bit, it feels a little bit different. And I can't word it any other way, which I realise doesn't help you. But that's kind of how I feel about it. I go back to what I said. I understand their narrative, what they want to push, what I want to push for with net zero and bringing less tyres or fewer tyres. I know they want to do that, but we've also got wet tyres that we never use that could just not be used or not take the races. I know they've got to be careful, but I did think today maybe there's a way they could make a tyre that's between the inter and the wet, and it is just the wet tyre, like we have in, I know Formula 2 just use the wet tyre, but they only have the wet tyre. It's wet or slick. So, is there anything they could do between inter and wet there? So they only bring one lot of wet tyres. But then if you get a Malaysia-style downpour like we used to have, where it comes down by the ocean full, as the great Murray Walker said, you have a weekend like that and suddenly you look really stupid because you can't go racing, but then we're not racing in those conditions anyway. So could you do like Tuna says like a super intermediate, something like that. But then you've then got drivers having to drive around on that and burn them out and then wait for slicks, and maybe I don't know. It was just a thought, because if they want to get their usage of tires down and they want to push for all of that, then we're taking, is it 2 sets of the wets and 3 sets of the intermediates to Abu Dhabi? Like, why? Even if it hammered it down, it's going to dry pretty swiftly. So is there really a need to take them? So I just feel like maybe if there's a balance there somewhere, or if we're not using a wet tyre, just take the inters, and then if it's raining too heavily, then you don't race, which they don't do anyway. Yeah, Zandvoort was a heavy downpour, and then they put the red flag out, didn't they? I know they were right to put the red flag out. I'm just saying that the red flag was out, then they waited for it all to ease up, and all of the stuff. We see it in qualifying, we see it in practice, so we're not really using the wets, are we? So, but there you go. Lewis says, controversial opinion, get rid of hard tyres. I tell you what tyres you can get rid of, Lewis, the C0. What was the point in that? That's another thing. I'm on one now, here we go. I was going to say this quickly, but yeah, just also, what's the point? You know, you're producing a C0 that we've not used. Well, that's not great, is it? You know, so we've got the C0 we never use, the wets that we very rarely use at all, unless it's behind a safety car, and then the race generally gets red flagged anyway. So you've got a wet tyre we never use, a C0 we've never used, maybe just C1 to 5. It's easier for tyre talks as well, tyre transitions, I must admit. Frankly, it's much easier for me. From a purely selfish point of view, to work with the number 5 than it is number 6, as stupid as it sounds. But yeah, C1 to C5, and then the intermediate. You know, that's one way to do it, but I still think there's a balance to strike. I'll repeat what I said in Hungary. I think it was Hungary, wasn't it? Yeah. I think there is a balance to strike here. There's 11 sets this weekend. There's normally 13. I think if you hit 12 and then just say to the drivers, use them how you want, I think that works probably as well. You've cut what you need to cut. A little bit less than you'd like to, but you've still done it, and then we see how we go. But just very quick on tyres, actually, it's just come to me. Really interesting rumours around the tyre supply for F1 at the moment. Apparently, the decision on who's going to supply tyres in the future, obviously next season it's Pirelli and so on, but in the future, who's going to supply tyres, apparently that decision's on hold because Bridgestone have, and it is only a rumour, so I must stress that, it's only a rumour. It may not be 100% true, or there might be some truth to it, whatever, but a rumour that Bridgestone have up their bid to become F1's tyre supplier, and I would sort of love that. Them or Goodyear, proper retro vibes. Not that Pirelli isn't a retro vibe as well, but you know what I mean. It'd be cool to see Bridgestone back to mix things up, but we shall see. Maybe there's something there that can be done. I don't know, or a decision that we're taking around that. But I get rid of the C0 and the wets. We don't use either really, so why bother? But at the same time, as I say, you look foolish if you don't take the wet tyres with you. So I like rumours as well, cited Canvas. Do you know, actually, it's funny. A lot of people don't like rumours in F1. I do, because sometimes they're absolutely bang on. Daniel Ricciardo to Renault, for example. And sometimes they're ludicrous, and I love them. And it's just nice to talk about them sometimes. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So long as you are not clickbaiting and you're sort of going, look, this is a rumour that's probably absolute BS. However, let's talk about it and laugh at it. And then if it comes true, you look a fool. But I like that. So if the intermediate tyres and wets would be engineered to have a longer shelf life, we wouldn't have to waste as many tyres, says Class. That's a is it Class or Class? That's a very good point, actually. Yeah, longer shelf life. Don't have to waste so many. It's a good point. A lot go to waste. I think they are. I don't think they're thrown on a Springfield tyre fire or anything like that. I think they are recycled, but it is still waste, isn't it? You've still got to recycle that, which is still energy and all of this, and you've still got to transport them. So I just think there are other things they could do. 12 sets, use them how you want, don't take the wets, get rid of the C0s. I don't think there's any real issue with that, but there'll be lots of people who disagree, but there you go. We will come to Hamilton's contract and George Russell's contract shortly as well. I do want to talk about that today, but just a little look ahead to tomorrow's Grand Prix. I know we've sort of done it, but just do we need to do a look ahead over? Do you think, have we sufficiently done a look ahead to tomorrow's race? I don't really think there's a lot more to say. I like to do a little bit of a qualifying roundup, but we tend to talk about the race in that as well, and then I like to do a bit of a race look ahead, but I feel like we've kind of covered that quite nicely because there's not really much more to say. Just for anybody who's joining late, most of us seem to agree Verstappen's probably going to win, but it could be an interesting fight at the front, and that Alex Albon is going to really keep things spicy behind, and it'll be fun to see some cars out of position coming back through. But could look at individual performances from qualifying instead. There are a few in there that are worth picking out, so we could go with that. Chris says, will there be an almighty crash into turn one? I don't think so. Max can play it cautious, can't he? He doesn't need to be taking any crazy risks, and I don't think Ferrari would want to risk a massive smash into turn one tomorrow, even if they're second and third at the end of the weekend. I don't think they mind. The weather forecast for tomorrow is a good question. So lights out local time is 2 p.m. No, it isn't. It'll be 3 p.m, won't it? 3 p.m, 2 p.m here, 3 p.m in Monza, and it's currently forecast, to be between 28 and 30 degrees. So it's going to be quite hot. So back to that tyre dead question. Maybe tyre degradation will be a big thing tomorrow. And chance of rain for lights out, 0%, and the chance of rain doesn't increase until about 8 o'clock when it goes to 2%. So I don't think any rain tomorrow, and it's going to be hot. So hot and sunny and dry, which is an interesting one. We haven't had rain at all this weekend, have we? So if that is true, this weekend will be the first weekend since Baku that we've not had any rain in any session. The reason I'm asking if we've had rain this weekend is because I didn't watch any of practice yesterday. I was distracted and forgot about it. And I didn't realise until Jonty messaged me at 6:15 that I'd missed the entire day. So we'll leave it at that. I'll let you try and work out what I was doing. But yeah, it was about 6:15 when Jonty messaged me that I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it's 6:15. That's my entire day gone and I've missed practice. So I had to go back and watch the 2-minute highlights that they put out. Not that it's worth doing, and it didn't look like there was any rain. So there you go. I can't believe how much rain we've seen this season, but there, it's spicy. I mean, Zandvoort last weekend was mental on Sunday. Really enjoyed that. Even the bit in between. People talking about the rain, but all the bit in between was fantastic as well. It was a lot going on, so I enjoyed that one. Track looked greasy in FP1, but was watching without sound. Says, is it Trinder? That's what I've gone with. So there you go. Just on individual performances, then I'll do that, and then we'll carry on with the waffle. I mean, it's all waffle, really. That's kind of the point. Sergio Perez today. So I felt like I wanted to come in and be a bit more critical of him, because even in Q3, Max Verstappen dipped a wheel on the gravel, will have cost him a little bit of time, and Perez was still 3/10 down, and come the end of the session, he was 3/10 down as well, which is a hefty gap. Nearly 4/10, I suppose you could say. So it's a pretty hefty gap, but it's not actually where he's been at times this season. That's not horrendous. And he is up against Max Verstappen, so I'll give him the credit there. But then I kind of went and did a bit of reading around the weekend of the whole and listened to Ted's notebook as well. It's worth remembering with Checo that he has got an engine in the back of the car which is older, so that could affect power. He also had lost track time as well. One which was the leak this morning, which wasn't his fault, and then the other one was his incident in practice, which was his fault. So that's a factor as well. So I don't think it's just as straightforward as Perez was slower than Verstappen today. There were other factors there. I'll get to my point in a minute. But also, he said he went into qualifying blind due to the issues, these setup issues in FP3, and then the lack of track time because of the leak in FP3 and the off in FP2, and the older engine in the car. So that's all kind of what Ted and Perez have said thrown together there in one big statement. But at the same time, whilst I appreciate and accept that those are all going to be factors, it's not like he's not been 3, 4, 5 tenths off all season, is it? So pretty much all season, certainly lately. So if he'd been a second off, I think you could probably argue those points in a way. You could sort of go, he's not always a second off, but he's pretty consistently 3, 4 tenths off anyway, isn't he? So I don't think it's had that massive impact on Perez this weekend. It will have impacted it, and he probably would have been closer, because I think he said after his practice session, I think I read that it was one of his best days. It was one of his best Fridays of the season. So there you go. Hi, Jonty. Jonty's in the chat. We'll talk about you a minute ago. Messaging me yesterday to save me from myself. Thank you very much. Says grazie ragazzi, grazie mille, Forza Ferrari. Hell yeah. I'm not going to do the crazy frog, which could have been hilarious, that Seb did. But yeah, great day for Ferrari, definitely. But that was just my thoughts on Perez. Sort of, I'm not defending him with those reasons, but they are reasons and they're not excuses. But also, let's not forget, it's not like he's been on Verstappen's rear end all season, is it, in terms of pace? So that's kind of that. What's Elton Sampson says, Perez always makes excuses that are pure lies. He's just not as fast and can't admit that. Slightly more brutal version of what I said. I like that. Very brutal. But no, I think in his defense, I think they are reasons this time rather than excuses. But again, for the third time, it's not like he's not consistently 3 or 4 tenths off anyway, is it? So it's not destroyed his day. I've talked about Liam Lawson. I won't do it again other than to say, love the guy. brilliant performance. Lance Stroll today, really poor, down in 20th place, 8 tenths off Alonso in Q1. However, had no Friday running due to Felipe Drugovich taking his seat, and he had issues as well, I believe, in FP2. So that's really good. He's only really had FP3 in that car. And, you know, it does look like, as a non-F1 driver, you look at Monza and you think, well, that looks easy. It's all straights and a couple of chicanes. It's not, that can't be hard. It's a track that you want to get dialed into, and you want to get your setup right for pace, because you want to go low downforce, but you still want the stability under braking and the traction through those chicanes. You still want that all to work as well. So a little bit of leeway there for Lance today. But again, a bit like Perez, it's not like he's not been way off Alonso all season. Although apparently Mike Crack says there's no... Did he say, was it no noticeable performance gap between, or no significant performance gap between the two drivers? Just points. Which I thought was delusional. And interesting, I guess, is what I should have said rather than delusional. But I would say there's a pretty hefty performance gap based on me watching F1 between Alonso and Stroll, but then I haven't got all the data. So I think, yeah, we'll just call him Mike, or Mr. I was going to say Mr. Crack, but that's somehow worse than Mike Crack, is Mr. Crack. Anyway, oh no. Thanks, Will. You threw me off my stride. How dare you? No, but no, I think there has been a pretty decent gap between Alonso and Stroll, but a bit like Perez on Verstappen. Am I surprised by that? Not in the slightest. Fernando Alonso is a sensational driver. Lance Stroll is just okay. So it's... And yeah, exactly. You know, no performance gap, just points is ridiculous. Says Azara. Irene says that. So it's... In order to have that points gap, there has to be a performance gap. Lance Stroll hasn't just faced bad luck, also. He's had bad luck this season and been caught out with some really poor decisions, like the strategy in Zandvoort, for example. But it's not all been that. He just hasn't been as quick as Alonso, which is fine. We're talking about Lance Stroll versus Fernando Alonso here. It's fine that Stroll isn't as quick as Alonso, but it's a little bit, or it stinks a little bit of, I can't really say that he's not performing because Daddy owns the team. Do you know, that's what, it probably isn't that, but that's what it feels like for me on the outside looking in at a comment like that. So, yeah, a bit of a weird one. But today, I think this weekend I'll cut him the slack, though. It's kind of the TLDR of that, I suppose. But just no Friday running. And then you've got to get in the car in FP3, try and get that car hooked up and set up right and all of that. And then delivering qualifying, it's not easy. But I think even with those issues, I would expect him to be better than 20th on the grid, to be honest. Yeah, but cited canvas as Lance did start the season with a broken arm. He did, but am I the only one who feels like his performances with a broken arm were better than they are now? Obviously, the car was better at the start of the season. That probably plays a part, and it just it's just coincidental. But you look at him at the start of the season, you think, God, maybe he should break his arm more often. I don't mean that, but you know what I mean. That's kind of where I'm at with that. But he should be doing better than 20th, regardless of how much time he's had in the car, really. But like I say, just on that point again, just to cover off the comments later, I'm not saying that's the reason he was better. It just feels like it. But obviously the car was better at that stage as well. So I think back to that, it is quite amazing he got in the car, wasn't it? When you think about it. How quickly? It was about 12 days. 12 days. Had his accident, broke his arm, and he was in the car. I mean, that's quite impressive. Testament to his doctor's recovery and his struggles in Bahrain. I remember taking his hand off a steering wheel and think he was really struggling in Bahrain, but he did a cracking job to come back from that. But look, I think Lance Stroll's a better driver than people give him credit for, but he's not one of the best out there by a long way. I'm not an idiot. I'm perfectly aware of that. I'll take cash this month, please, Lawrence, rather than a check. Checks cleared last month, but that'd be nice. Yeah, you could argue that. Maybe should have taken a bit more time to recover, but or just on a sort of broken bones and recovery. Ted was saying that Daniel Ricciardo, the best case scenario is Singapore, but probably back for Japan. Apparently Helmut Marko, though, he said in an interview, and I know Marko, pinch of salt, don't believe everything, all of that. He said unlikely Singapore, best case scenario Japan, but probably it won't be Japan either. So I haven't got the quote in front of me, but it was essentially saying that it will probably miss Singapore and Japan as well. Singapore, I think I said that. I'd be very surprised if his first race back from an injury like that is a track that is, a race that is 2 hours long. It's hot, it's humid, it's 90 left, it's 90 right. It's a lot of gear changes. It's a lot of turning the steering wheel. I'd be very surprised if that's the first race back. Japan at the earliest, but he will be back. I'm 100% sure. Would I... Liam Lawson is doing a good job. He did a good job at Zandvoort. He's done a good job again today. If he keeps that up, he's maybe putting himself in the frame for next season. But possibly from a selfish point of view, as a bit of a Liam Lawson fan nowadays, I want him to go and win Super Formula, or try and win Super Formula first. So I don't really want him to see the season out at AlphaTauri, because I think it'd be good for him to go and try and finish that championship off, which is the end of October, I think we said last time, didn't we? So I think Ricciardo will be back 100%, but probably not until after Singapore, and maybe not even until after Japan. We shall see. But best wishes, of course, to Danny Wick. I've got to say to Jonathan Wass. Danny Rick once again. I'm sure it'll be good. It'll be fine. Who else we got? Alpine was the other one I wanted to talk about. So Alpine, I am not totally surprised to see them struggling this weekend. Ocon didn't help himself running wide at the exit of Ascari at turn 10, of course. Damage to the floor, I believe, into the gravel. Did pretty well not to make that worse than it actually was. So good stuff there. They tried the toe, didn't work out, but this isn't a surprise. Renault have spent the last few weeks and months complaining about how down on power they are and how they want to come into this engine equalisation phase, because there are teams and drivers and some fans who believe that if one team doesn't do as good as another team, we should change the rules and mix things up to allow the other teams to catch up, rather than just expecting other teams to do a better job in the first place. But there you go. So they want this engine equalisation. It could go through, but it doesn't sound like Ferrari and Mercedes are on board, which could make it difficult. We shall see. But that Renault engine just does not have the power. And that was evident today quite clearly. So that's why they are 17th and 18th, not helped by Ocon's mistake either. But, the power just wasn't there. So I'm not... If you'd have told me this morning, or even the start of the weekend, or Thursday in the comments of the preview, that Alpine will be down the back somewhere in qualifying, I'd have absolutely believed you. That it would be no surprise whatsoever. So I think frustrating for them, frustrating for Renault, but maybe somewhere like Singapore that could help them. Those street tracks, a bit more tight and twisty. They could have a good weekend, but it's apparently quite a hefty deficit. But it's just not surprising to see them down there. And they're a bit of a weird... I've said this so many times this season. They're such a weird team this year, aren't they? They're up and down and up and down. One weekend, best of the rest, or, top of the midfield, whatever you want to call them. And then another weekend, struggling down the back. But I think part of that is the engine. I don't think the car itself, chassis-wise, is a bad car. I think it's the engine that's the issue more than anything for Alpine. Marty says Ryan Reynolds will make them good. There you go. Maybe. The money might. The money will help. I'm sure it will, but there you go. And Will Chan says Alpine needs to stop complaining and just do better. That's kind of the point I'm making. It's the same with Red Bull dominance. People saying we need to change the regulations. When Mercedes were dominating, people, when they had their dominant seasons, thinking 2020 in particular, 2019 as well, people talk about changing the regulations. Why? Red Bull have done a better job than everybody else. I've always, and you can go back and watch any video where we have this conversation, or stream where we have this conversation. When people talk about Ferrari domination in the past, or Mercedes domination, or Red Bull domination, it's like, oh, they're ruining the sport. Your complaints need to be directed at Ferrari this year, Mercedes, lesser extent Aston Martin, but still Aston Martin, and the rest of the grid for not building a car good enough to compete with Red Bull. That's where the complaint is for me. So I don't like the idea of just changing rules because in this case, Renault couldn't build an engine fast enough, especially when you consider, or powerful enough, especially when you consider that it was only a couple of seasons ago that I think Renault were boasting about having the fastest engine on the grid, or talking over the winter about having the fastest engine on the grid, and they found all this amazing horsepower and they were going to be the power unit to beat, and then it did appear to be much better, and then this season it's just shocking. So yeah, I just don't see the point in switching regulations because somebody did a better job. It's just a personal thing. There'll be lots of people who think it's a good idea, but it was yeah, and then you get that argument. Mercedes domination was reined in with DAS, oil burning floor rate. DAS wasn't the thing that made that car quick. And even with oil burning, floor rake I'll give you, but oil burning, it hardly changed much, did it? They were still the team to beat. But it was the same with. I'm not being a hypocrite. I'm not saying it just because it's Red Bull. I'm saying I've said it for Mercedes. I would have said it for Ferrari if I had to channel back then. I wouldn't have. I'm lying to you because I would have loved the fact that Ferrari were dominating. So I definitely not want the regulations changed. But it's just one of the many pet peeves I have with Formula One. I love the sport, but I have so many pet peeves. And one of them is boo-hoo, I didn't do a good enough job, please change the rules. That's not how it's supposed to be. It's a big word alert, meritocracy. I said meritocracy to my mum the other day. I was talking about Formula One, and she was like, "Oh, big word, look at you." I was like, "Sorry, I'm not as thick as you think I am, mum." I know some big words like and but. We're not going to go into DAS. We've done lots on DAS and things like that. So, yeah, good point, Chris B. Fair enough. But that was just a random point I came to there on that, and I had a bit of too much of a waffle on it. But yeah, Alpine just not where they need to be. I think one of the big surprises for me was Alfa Romeo, I suppose, today. A disappointing surprise, I suppose. Bad surprise. Yeah, could call it that. I thought they'd be quicker. I wasn't expecting potentially, Q3, but I'm looking at where Yuki Tsunoda and Liam Lawson are 11th and 12th, but I would have thought Alfa would have been 11th and 12th, and probably Tsunoda and effectively swap Tsunoda and Lawson and Zhou and Bottas around, and that's kind of where I expected those two teams to be this weekend. I didn't think it'd be that way around, so I thought Alfa would be quicker than that. But at the same time, where's the stat? I did write it down. I hope I wrote it down because it's a good point. That's a different point. I'm at a point in a minute then. It's a different stat. Doesn't matter. But there's not a huge amount between them. So it's big enough, but it's not a huge amount. But also in terms of how close the field is just generally, I'll read this now. 0.067 seconds, so nearly 7/100ths cover Piastri in P8 and Tsunoda in P11. So it is pretty, and that was in Q2, I think. Yeah, so it's pretty close. It's really close in that midfield. So when you see, for example, who have we got? A Nico Hulkenberg in 13th place, or even a Tsunoda in 11th place. Don't forget, he's only in that session 700ths off P8. So it's still a really great performance. And it just, obviously, the way the qualifying works, you lose drivers, it makes it look, I think, worse than it actually is. But I think we're in for a good race tomorrow. It tends to be pretty decent at Monza. I've just jinxed that. I'm so sorry. I think it tends to be pretty good at Monza. But yeah, they're really the points I wanted to make. Looking through the field, Haas, no great surprises there. They sort of, Nico Hulkenberg qualifying, I think, has been really, really strong this season, but he'll go backwards tomorrow, unfortunately. Kevin Magnussen can't go much further backwards, but he will go backwards in 19th place there, so that won't be a great surprise. Let's do predictions then. Let me know your top three for tomorrow. What order you think the top three will be? And then we might do a driver of the day or qualifier of the day in a bit as well. But let me know your top three. I'll do mine in a minute. I'll end this poll quickly while you are popping those in chat. I'll read a few out as well. So in the poll, who will win tomorrow's Italian Grand Prix? Verstappen, Sainz, Leclerc, or other? 452 votes, which points me to the likes. 778 likes. So let's try and get those likes up a little bit. That'd be massively appreciated. Please do drop a like and subscribe as well. Channel needs it at the moment more than ever. Verstappen 73% say will win. Sainz 15%. Leclerc only 5%. That surprised me a little bit. And other is 5%. So again, I'm intrigued where that other is. I'm guessing you're thinking of Perez or a Russell maybe, somewhere along those lines. But I would be very surprised if we don't see a Red Bull and the Dutch national anthem playing on Sunday. Very, very surprised. But I thought Leclerc might get a bit more than 5%, if I'm being honest on that one. Not that I'm always honest. That's the problem. That's what gets me into trouble half the time, is I'm always honest. I don't always think before I speak. Have you noticed? Dex says Leclerc, Verstappen, and Sainz for the top three. Martin says Max, Leclerc, and Alex. Chris says Max, Sainz, and Albon. Oh, do you know what I'd give for a Williams podium? If Jonty's still here, I know he'd give very much the same for a Williams podium. I'd love that. A season where we had Ferrari, McLaren and Williams all on the podium. It would just be a moment. Just about take everyone else out of the championship. Just those three teams. What a moment that would be. Michael says Verstappen, Sainz and Leclerc. Will says Verstappen, Perez, Albon. Wow. Verstappen, Albon and Perez for... Is it Trinder or Tumda? I can't read that properly. Hang on. Yeah, it's definitely an R. But you know who you are. Verstappen, Albon and Perez. Verstappen cites Russell for Leia. Oh, yes, we'll talk about the Ferrari penalties. Thank you very much to Mickey. That was the other thing. It's on my notes. I've missed it. Yes, Ferrari penalties. Talk about in a minute. No penalty as it was. Nico says Verstappen, Hamilton cites. Valentine says Verstappen cites and Albon. Funkel. Fair enough. It says Verstappen cites Albon. John says Verstappen cites and Perez. Lewis says Leclerc, Verstappen, Hamilton. 5 more. Girl Weeb says Albon's going to win. Oh, do you know? I'd love that. I hope tomorrow you're in chat going, I was right, because I would love a Williams win. When was the last one? 2012? Was it Maldonado? Massa didn't win with them, did he? In that 2014 era when they were a bit quicker, and I don't think Bottas didn't either. So, wow, is it really that long? God. Oh, yeah, that's a shame. Klaas says Leclerc cites Verstappen. I might be a Verstappen fan, but Ferrari won 2 at Monza. There's no beating that. Imagine the podium. That'd be amazing. Sandamino says Max, Charles, Sergio. We know Ferrari like fumbling poles. Fair enough. And one more then, if we haven't got one. Sainz, Russell, and Hamilton for Azari is what I'm going to call you. So there we go. And Khalifa says Verstappen, Sainz, and Leclerc. Yeah, mine's tomorrow. Verstappen. Definitely Verstappen. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't win. But just for the record, I want him to, just because I want him to get that record. And part of me, as I said last week, kind of does want him to just win every race between now and the end of the season, just so he's done it, and then we've witnessed it, and Red Bull have won them all, and then that never has to happen again. We can have a really close championship next year. 6 teams in it. Never going to happen, but 6 teams in it. Really exciting stuff. There you go. That's my trade-off. But yeah, Verstappen for the win. I'll go Sainz second as well. I think he's got a shot. I'd love to put Albon there, but I think probably Perez will be P3 with that DRS. In fact, it could even be P2, but I'll go P3 for Perez. Slightly different to prediction on Thursday. Prediction Thursday was Verstappen, Norris, and Perez. I don't see Norris on the podium tomorrow, but you never know. You never know. Could be chaotic. You never know. Yes, the other thing we do need to talk about. Thank you again for reminding me, Mickey. I completely forgot. Ferrari were under investigation after Q1 for failing to follow race director's notes during Q1, which was, they were told before the session by the race director that they need to keep to a lap time of a 1:41 between the 2 safety car lines, safety car line 1, safety car line 2, just so that we didn't have those silly scenes we've had in the past where cars are driving really slowly and we see close calls and people not getting to the line and making a complete arse of themselves. Just so we didn't see that. Safety, obviously, the paramount, but other things need to be mentioned as well. Ferrari actually breached that, which is interesting. So I think Anthony Davis said about a 1:43, so about 2 seconds over that time. Now, most people, I think, were expecting a penalty because that sounds like a pretty hard and fast rule. However, the very short version of this is that basically there was some allowance for faster cars coming through and cars slowing down to let them through so they weren't impeding. Because obviously if you impede a car, then you're going to get another penalty. So they're allowed a little bit of leeway there, which, as they said on Sky, kind of makes you wonder why you bother having the directive in the first place. But to read you the decision... no further action was taken. Both drivers stayed at or above speeds necessary to stay below 1:41.0 around the vast majority of the circuit and especially on the straights. However, in both cases, the stewards determined that the drivers took appropriate actions to slow and stay to the side of the track so as not to impede other drivers. And in both cases, they did this significantly to allow 4 drivers to pass while giving those drivers a clear track. The stewards therefore determined that they did not drive unnecessarily slowly. I love these rules. And that evidently the reason they were both slightly above the maximum time was due to their appropriate actions and take no further actions. I think that's pretty reasonable, to be honest. I joke about why is the rule there in the first place, but it's if there is that leeway, and also again in the regulations, it's the regs are driving unnecessarily slowly. Were they driving unnecessarily slowly? No, because they were letting other cars through, so they didn't get other penalties of impeding, which would have been worse. But it just didn't. They obviously felt that that's mitigating circumstances is a phrase I hate, but I guess that's what they're looking at. So when you first hear under investigation for not following race director's notes, you think, well, that's a penalty of some sort. Then when you read the decision, you think, yeah, I kind of get that. That does make sense, and that's sort of fair enough. But I can understand why maybe other teams are looking at this and saying, well, then we'll just say we're letting cars through then and not worry about it. But it doesn't really... I think Ted made the point that it would have been, in terms of consistently applied penalties, it would have been a reprimand anyway. When these have happened in the past, it's been a reprimand. I know Crofty said it would be a sporting penalty, or Martin Brundle did, somebody did, but Ted said afterwards in his notebook that this is usually dealt with a reprimand, so it probably would have changed the grid anyway. But I did find it interesting as well. I think it's been mentioned in chat that it was supposed to be investigated after the session and then was investigated during the session. So there you go. I don't know. I did cheekily think to myself, if that had happened at Spa, would that have been a penalty? Is that genuine? It's Monza. Let them do it. I'm joking, Ferrari fans. Rufus says the race said that it was okay because the reason they didn't make it was because they slowed down to avoid impeding. Absolutely, that's how I've read the thing as well, the decision. So it makes sense, doesn't it? It does make sense. I mean, let me know if you disagree. I think if you're driving slowly, again, unnecessarily, because you want to make a gap to the car in front and you exceed the time, then yeah, you probably should be penalised, or you should be penalised. But if you're slowing to let another car through because you don't want to do what I would say is a worse thing and impede another driver on their fast lap, then you've got to allow a little bit of leeway and a little bit of common sense in the FIA, maybe. I know, right? Common sense in the FIA. I just think in that, I don't think I'd give him I wouldn't have given him a penalty for it. Unless it was that they were just driving slowly for the sake of it. But I can understand why teams might be like, whatever. We won't bother in future. Tuna says, don't care if it's the right decision or not. I just kind of want to know how the Tifosi would react if the FIA penalised Ferrari at Monza. Look at how the crowd reacted at Canada in 2019. So take that, multiply that by 1 million, and that would be the reaction at Monza. Yeah. Scott says the stewards need to sleep in Italy tonight, definitely. But yeah, I don't think it was a big deal. John says it doesn't make that much sense to me. Impeding is almost always a case of positioning on the track. We see impeding at high speed too. It's staying on the racing line. Staying on the racing line. That's the problem. Yeah, no, I get that. I just don't think it's. We said it. I think we said it a million times, haven't we, John? And people in chat will be the same. We don't want to see cars driving what looks like 2 miles an hour with a car coming behind at 220 miles an hour, because that's a recipe for disaster. But I think having a bit of common sense in the FIA, just sitting there going, it's okay to go a bit slower if you're letting faster cars through, but then the FIA has to be on top of that. The FIA also have to be able to sit there and say, right, we've checked every single one of those you let through was on a fast lap and you weren't just letting cars through for the sake of it, because that's where you get your grey area, isn't it? That's where you have teams go, but I was letting him go. I didn't know he was on a slow lap. So the FIA need to be on top of team radio, and they need to be on top of it if they're going to allow for that leeway. But I don't think I'd have penalised that for... If it had been a 2-minute 41 lap, I'd probably have penalised them, because that's a bit of a piss take. They wouldn't have got around to do the lap anyway, but you know my point. But a couple of seconds because of that reason is fair. Random says, where was Hamilton today? He was P8. Was Hamilton today. I didn't see any reaction from Hamilton. I can have a look at his press release, see if he said anything interesting on that one. Or not interesting, I'm sure he said something very interesting, but see if he said anything as to why he was down on his teammate today. And what was the gap in the end in Q3? 20.6, 20.8, couple of tenths, so it's not like there's a massive gap in there. But I guess he just couldn't get the car hooked up, is my guess there. See if it said anything. No. I have nothing here except for a preview for some reason, which is annoying. Saturday report, so that might be in there, Sean. Maybe click that one. It's an idea. Try. Hamilton says, that wasn't the greatest session. We started off the weekend well in FP1 on the first run. Then it feels like things have got more complicated and I just haven't found the sweet spot with the car. There you go. It was improving through qualifying and we made it to the top 10, but I still didn't have the feeling I wanted with the car on the final run. We know how close the times are in qualifying, and that also translates to very similar race pace, which can make it hard to make up positions through the field, especially early in the race. George did a great job today to get on the second row. I hope I can make progress forwards tomorrow. So just couldn't get to grips with the car, as I speculated on there. Yeah, that's that one. No major dramas, just car not hooked up for him today. So George Russell P4. I think that's a really good result, to be fair to George. We'll do some Q&A in a minute. You can ask me about the race tomorrow, ask me about anything from the session that you want me to talk about. And I know there are things that I haven't talked about, but some things really don't matter. And I will do that. But just let me know who your qualifier of the day was in chat. And again, I'll read a couple out, but I think there was some really great performances, like Carlos Sainz, for not just qualifier, but practicer of the weekend. I think he's done a cracking job. He deserves a big shout for that pole position. I think George Russell actually did a really decent job as well in P4, but it's very difficult. I mean, Oscar Piastri as well out qualifying Lando Norris. Liam Lawson within 0.2 of Yuki Tsunoda. Lance Stroll only 0.8 off Alonso. I'm joking, but I think it's difficult not to look at Alex Albon for me, to be honest. But no, it is. It's very easy to ignore it. I'll tell you why it's easy to ignore it. I expected him to be up there because of the pace, but it's got to be in the mix for qualifier of the day, hasn't he? But I think George Russell as well, for like he's saying, fourth place, was not. I think Williams said afterwards Albon said afterwards he thought that Williams had got Mercedes today, and so to end up behind, so for Russell to end up ahead of not only Albon but also Red Bull is pretty decent as well. So. And yeah, Max's lap, Max's lap was a little bit underrated. I think 100th off pole, 13,000th, whichever way you want to see it. I think that's a pretty decent lap and not far off, is it? I mean, we're arguing over nothing really, but Carlos Sainz just that fraction quicker and got pole position. So I want to say Sainz. I think I want to say Sainz, just because I think not only. It's that final lap. You've seen your teammate go fastest. You've then seen Max Verstappen pip him. Or, they're going to have seen big screens. They'll know these things. They're not stupid. These drivers always watch what's going on. Should be focusing on the track, lads. But I think, that pressure's on that final lap. And I think it'd be very easy for him to make a mistake and dip a wheel like Verstappen did on his first run. And he didn't. He kept it clean and delivered a really good lap. Was pretty comprehensively up in it. I think 0.2 up in the middle sector on his teammate, I believe. 2 tenths quicker than Leclerc in the middle sector on his final run. So that's pretty impressive. So I think I'll say Sainz today. I don't give Sainz enough love, really. I don't think anybody does, but there you go. Except for Sainz fans, obviously. There you go. Mickey says Russell for me. Alex Albon for Josh. Richard says Albon as well. Top three did all did great, says Chris. Agree. Letok says Carlos. Piastri did a brilliant job ahead of Lando. Says Sainz's canvas. And Sainz, Russell, Albon and Lawson were all impressive, says Sandamino. I agree. Valentine says Sainz as well. So yeah. Questions then. Questions. If you're watching this later, I will try and timestamp these, by the way, but you're not going to get great timestamps on a waffle because that's not the point. I appreciate not everyone wants to listen to me for an hour and a half to try and find what they want to hear, but I'm not going to spend an hour trying to pick out timestamps of God knows what I'm talking about, because yeah, I do it for the race reactions because I can break that down a bit better, but I'm not going to do it for these quite so much. You'll get a start and then a couple of them in there as well. But please do leave a like as well. We're nearly at 100, 283 of you still here, 288 of you here now. Please do leave a like and don't forget to subscribe as well. Live again tomorrow night, and of course then we've got Singapore, Japan coming up and a busy end to the season. So please do pop a subscribe and a like on the channel video thing. That went really well. Really, really well, Sean. Great stuff. Yes, so Albon podium says random, question mark. I would be surprised without something happening. So I think he's quick. He's quick in a straight line. I think he's got a shot at worst staying where he is, but I think he's got a shot at maybe making top 5 tomorrow. And I think that would have been an absolutely incredible result for Williams if he could do that. But I think he's going to need a really nicely timed safety car or a red flag pit stop, or dare I say, accidents ahead. I think he's going to need that to be on the podium. But just to be clear, I'd love him up there. A. Williams up there would be sensational, but I'm just not completely sure or convinced that he's going to do that. So it would be nice, but no, I don't think so. Albon getting onto the podium would be madness as well, definitely. It's not bootlicking to say that his lap was underrated, Shogun, at all. It's an opinion. It's a bet because he's P2. People think it's a crap lap. There are people that will think like that, I'm afraid, and will underrate it. But actually, it's a decent lap when that Ferrari was so rapid to be that close. So and there's nothing between them. 3 tenths up on his, 4 tenths up on his teammate. 3 tenths clear of everybody else. I don't think it's bootlicking at all. I think it's a fair point that I can't remember who made the point now, but I think it's a fair point that was made. The pressure for driving at Ferrari at Monza and fight for pole and deliver is amazing, says Martin. Terrifying is the word you're looking for. Huge pressure, definitely. I did predict a meaty DRS train. Maybe one driver will be a bit too eager and cause a crash, says Chris B. Do you think Perez could get the win, says Rocket? What do you reckon, chat? Perez for win, yes or no? I mean, well, how pedantic do you want me to be? Perez could get the win. I don't think he will. Again, I'd like Max to get the win just to get that record, and then I'd like Sergio to win Singapore, maybe Japan as well. Certainly Mexico would be epic, absolutely epic. So that'd be nice. I'd like to see Perez win some race before the end of the season, but I don't think tomorrow. I mean, again, he could. He absolutely could, but I think he'd need some luck. I just don't think he will. John says, what do you think of the qualifying farce? Formula 3 qualifying farce? I've only read about it, mate. I've not actually looked at it. I've not actually watched it. So I don't know. I don't know the ins and outs of it, but my understanding is there was a red flag and they decided not to restart because F2 quali and practice, F3 and F1 practice were coming. Let me know if I'm wrong on that. I think that's what I read. I've not got it in front of me, but it's... Because that gave Bortoletto the championship, didn't it? Didn't it? Oh, I just named the wrong driver. I'm going to Google 2023 F3 season, not F1 season, Sean. We've been there. So, yeah, it's given Bortoletto the title, hasn't it? But still one to go. Tomorrow, obviously. Is that the last race of the season, Monza? Oh, it is as well. Yeah, didn't know we're at that point already. But yeah, I'm trying to find the articles reading on it now. See if you guys are going to tell me in chat rather than that. Yeah, with over 10 minutes left on. Oh, yes, that was it. That was it. Yeah, it was the. It wasn't one of those situations where there's a couple of minutes left, was it? It was quite a decent amount of time. So my argument to that, and I think I've made this. I think we've had this conversation before, John T, on stream and in DMs and that. But in those situations, competitive sessions should always take priority. Like F1 is the main event, and F1 practice is important. However, you know, especially with a title on the line, that session should take priority over that. However, I think F2 came up straight afterwards, didn't it? Which is a competitive session as well. And I think that was their concern. But would it have destroyed the entire weekend if... I don't know, again, this is easy for me to sit here and say this from my office in Lincoln. You know, it's much... There are lots of rules and lots of reasons why they can't do these things. But from the outside looking in, would it have really been that disastrous if F2 quali had been delayed by 10 or 15 minutes or F1 practice had been delayed by 10 or 15 minutes? I don't think so. We've seen it before, haven't we? So, that's it. I mean, there's lots of reasons, Mickey. There's TV contracts. There's all sorts of reasons behind it. There's the circuit as well. They've got their timetable. They've got to get people in and out. And, you know, there'll be many, probably even regulatory reasons as well. I'm not going to go through the regulations, so to try and find out, not tonight. But even if they'd done something like, if there's 10 minutes left on the clock, they could have done something in theory like, we can't do the full session because of reasons, so we're going to put 5 minutes on the clock, off you go. They could have done that. And John says that F2 quali was delayed by 5 minutes anyway, but it wasn't much. So they could have done something. It's always a shame. Is that the second time we've seen an F2 or an F3 title? Drugovich was decided in the pits, wasn't it? And then this one's decided in the pits, and that's never... You know, I've talked before about how I don't like the idea of close titles or whatever been decided on a Saturday, but even worse if it's in the pit lane because you don't want to start the session or you can't start the session because F1 might be a bit late. It's a really weird. I don't like it. I think these drivers, I mean, Bortoletto's probably very happy to have the title sorted, but with less drama and less pressure. But he's a racer; he'd want to be out there, wouldn't he, doing it? But these young drivers spend a lot of money on these seats and a lot of money to get there, and you kind of feel like they should have the chance to deliver, to win a title or to stop somebody winning a title. I mean, F2 today, if you haven't seen it, spoiler alert, Frederic Vesti, the way he dealt with that pressure after the safety car restart, he really felt like he had to win that. You could see he wanted to win it, and I think he had to with Porsche being so quick. And if he wants to keep his title hopes alive, you want to see the drivers given the opportunity to either win a title or to try and stop who they're trying to fight winning the title and prolong it or whatever. But you can't do that from the pit lane, can you? And just another one from John says it's the 4th title in a row decided in the pit lane. F1 2 and 3 last year and now F3 this year. Oh yeah. F1 was technically, I suppose it was, wasn't it? Yeah. Johnny Herbert broke the news last year for F1, didn't he? Which was just so funny. just so, pinnacle of motorsport. Johnny Herbert. Oh, by the way, Max, forgot to mention, mate, I think you're world champion. I don't think there'll be too much confusion this year when it comes to winning the championship. This one's even more of a foregone conclusion than last year. But yeah, no, it's messy, but it's. I was going to say, if it was happening every year, I'd be concerned. But like you said, that's 4 in a row, technically. So I suppose it is now happening every year, isn't it? But I just wish there was a little bit. And I guess that's the problem when you've got a packed timetable, isn't it? But I kind of wish there was a little bit more give in the schedule sometimes. I just wish there was a bit more time between sessions to allow for things. Because you're looking at F2 and F3. Sorry to swear if it offends you, but shit's going to go down. It's F2 and F3. Stuff's going to happen. It's going to go wrong. You're going to get red flags and safety cars, and I think there's a little bit more time built in. But then there are so many. Like I said, I'm not going to go through them all, but you've also got to think about the sunlight in not so much Monza, but at the moment. But you've got to be careful with the lighting. We've seen in F1 some pretty horrible things happen when it's got a bit dark. You've got to be very careful with things like that, and I wouldn't want to be making that decision, but I kind of just wish that things like that were decided on the track. But yeah, I don't really know what else to say. I didn't really watch it. I'd probably been fuming at the time. I'm probably messaging you like, this is unacceptable. It's a disgrace. Rocket says, do you think we can get teams doing the double stacks tomorrow? I mean, obviously, sure, not tonight. They've got better things to do tonight. That's safety. If we get safety cars, yeah, but I think somebody made the point earlier that maybe Verstappen sits behind Sainz and Leclerc might be sat behind Verstappen for a good chunk of the first part of the race, and then you're going to see, undercuts triggered, aren't you? But I think unless we get a safety car tomorrow, there'll be no need for the double stack. But the reason I put that question out is just to let you know as well, if you haven't seen the news, Zandvoort is getting bigger. They're going to bigger their pit lane. That was English. They're going to extend their pit lane or their pit garages for a bit more space. So that should hopefully, because we had some chaos last week, didn't we? So I don't know what difference that'll make. We will find out, of course. But yeah, unless we get safety cars, I'd be surprised if this is too much double stacking. Could depend on Deg, I guess. Maybe. F1 Raw and Uncut says ready for Ferrari win tomorrow. Yeah. Somebody already said it. Ferrari, Monza, winning. Oh. It's a 2019 Charles Leclerc. Just a reminder as well, if Carlos Sainz were to win tomorrow, or George Russell, or Sergio Perez, or Alex Albon, let's live in dreamland, why not? That would be 6 different winners from the last 6 Italian Grand Prix. That's a stat for you, just for you. Ferrari will demonstrate how not to do a double stack, says Sighted Canvas. If any team's going to mess it up, it could be Ferrari. Yeah, maybe. We'll see. But yeah, no, I think tomorrow's going to be a good race. I do. I really, really do. That was what I was going to say. It came to me. I meant this yesterday. I should have checked again. I read somewhere, just on junior formulas, back to that Super Formula is trying to get on the support schedule for next year's Japanese Grand Prix. And the reason I'm bringing that up is not because it's factual, but it's something I think I read, is I just want to check with anybody in chat who may have also read that, or have I just lost my mind and dreamt that? Because I seem to feel like Super Formula, I'll do a quick Google again now, but I've not really, I could have made it up. I think it would be pretty amazing. Not Grand Pro, no, Grand Prix. I thought I read somewhere that they're trying to get, yeah, there we go. I wasn't making it up. Autosport back in April. That's how far back I'm going. The chairman of Super Formula has expressed an interest in holding a race as a support event to the Formula One Japanese Grand Prix in the future. I would bloody love that. Whether or not it will happen, we'll have to wait and see. Third weekend in a row, telling you if you've not seen Super Formula, definitely find a way to watch it. It is insanely good. And we'll get to see Liam Lawson as well. So, yeah, it is a rumour, I suppose, or that's what they're aiming for. It's probably not going to happen, but just I just had to check that then. I thought I was going mad. I thought I dreamt it. It is the sort of thing I dream, definitely. So, do you think Liam Lawson could get in the points? Again, could, but I was going to say I'm concerned for AlphaTauri in terms of their pace, but I think I saw a graphic. I see a lot of things. It's older age, not old age. Older age, like going onto Twitter to search for something and then searching Twitter for some reason, but it was from F1 Data Analysis, I think they're called, on the old Formula Data Analysis. Did some stuff after practice. Let me just find the practice stuff first and then I'll read the quali stuff about straight line speed. The fastest two cars at top speed in FP3 were Williams and AlphaTauri. So if that translates into the race, they could be well positioned here, AlphaTauri, for a couple of points, maybe even a double points finish. But the same people, again, Formula Data Analysis, give them a follow on Twitter, definitely, pointing out that actually in qualifying it was Ferrari and Alfa Romeo who were top speeds, 350 kilometers an hour with DRS. So I think they've got a chance, but I think they might be another one of those teams that need a little bit of fortune ahead of them. Things to happen. There are a couple of reasons I want Lawson to score points. Firstly, we've got too many drivers on 0 points. One of those isn't going to score, of course. But also, it would just be nice to see him do that this season. It's so obvious. It would just be nice to see him do it. That's exactly it. It would just be nice to see him do it before he goes back to Super Formula in a few weeks' time, after Singapore, possibly after Japan as well, if that's the way things go. But I can't help but look. Again, Stroll probably a little bit out where he's out of position. He's going to come through. We'll see. Maybe not, but he's going to be up there. So he's going to be up there with them fighting for that final points pen position. All the cars ahead of them are quicker, obviously, but I just don't see them. Good strategy. Maybe if they can pull a one, stop another to go for a 2, or a nicely timed safety car, or something like that. A bit like Albon for the podium, or a win. It might need a little bit of luck, but it's possible. It is possible that could happen. So, yeah. Would that make De Vries 23 in the championship? No. De Vries is still ahead of Ricciardo. Ricciardo's best result is 13th. De Vries is 12th. So for Nick, as long as Daniel Ricciardo and Liam Lawson don't finish any higher than 13th, he will keep P20 in the championship. Let's take two more. Let's do some quick fire questions. I'll tell you what, quick fire questions, anything you like. If it's completely unacceptable and completely unreasonable, I won't answer it, and rude, then no. John says, if Super Formula was easy to watch over here, I would rank it second best series to watch for racing after Indy. I can give him a login if I want, mate, before the next race. Just saying. Leave it at that. Quite happy to do that one. A couple of people are really liking the idea of Super Formula on a support list. I think soon it's not W Series anymore, or it's not W Series now, it's a different series, but it's the F1 Academy They're on the support thing soon, aren't they? On a support list for F1 soon. So there you go. Lance Stroll be rumoured to quit after next year and join tennis? ? That they've already dismissed that. I think they laughed that one out of the room when it was put to them. But I would be very surprised if Lance Stroll isn't in that car next year, and I'd be very, very surprised if Lance Stroll isn't in that car in 2025 and probably 2026 as well. I don't think he's going to go off and do tennis, although part of me would like to see that. Watch him go play tennis and suddenly just be the next Djokovic. Just imagine that. And he's the greatest thing tennis has ever seen. It's like, oh, Lance, why are you wasting your time with F1, mate? You could have gone and done that and made a fortune. Not that he's not making a fortune, of course. If Liam Lawson scores points, what do you think Dr. Helmut Marko would do with Lawson in AlphaTauri next year? I think it'll be more than points. I think he'll need to be, like today, consistently like he's doing today, a couple of tenths of his teammate, show some improvement. I don't think if he scores points tomorrow, Marco's going to go get him in that car for next year. I think he'll need to see consistent improvement, good pace versus his teammate, and if he gets points, that's a bonus. I don't think points is the one thing that Lawson needs to do to get that seat next year. I think it's about consistent improvement and not sticking it in the wall. Red Bull, AlphaTauri, they don't like it when people do that. So there you go. And if Lawson does great, is there a chance Danny won't get back in? Says Mickey. No. Ted was saying in his notebook that the noises are that whatever happens, Ricciardo will be back in the car because Liam Lawson's also going for the Super Formula title, which, Formula One drive, Super Formula, you might argue that, F1 drive probably trumps Formula One does trump Super Formula as a place where drivers want to be. But if he's got the chance to win a title in a series where, as I've said so many times last few weeks, you don't just walk into Super Formula and win the championship in your first season or win races in your first season. It's a very tough series. So if he can do that, that's great. And he gets a lot of experience. And I think he's got the super license points, obviously, because he's in the car, but he gets some more as well. So, prize money and all sorts. And I think they get a watch as well, don't they, Super Formula? I see on the podium, they get a watch when they win. So some more watches for him. There you go, to auction off. Who would you think is more in trouble at AlphaTauri, Yuki or Ricciardo? Now Lawson is in. Nick to come back if Ricciardo isn't ready. These are quick fire, I don't know. So I spoke to somebody the other day, a journalist, and their phrasing of it is essentially, unless there's a massive sudden change of plans, it'd be a very big surprise that if Yuki Tsunoda is not in the car next year. So it sounds like Yuki Tsunoda is pretty much nailed on for next year. So based on your question, technically Ricciardo, but as much as I like Liam Lawson, I would love to see him get the chance in F1. I'm still not convinced, unless he destroys Tsunoda, that he'll be in that car next year over Ricciardo. I still think Ricciardo's got he's probably the favourite just about to partner Tsunoda next year. But AlphaTauri also need to be looking to the longer term future, or Red Bull do. So they need to be looking at getting these juniors through, because otherwise we're going to bottleneck again. They're just not going to get people through and it'll get messy. So I think, I guess to answer the question, Ricciardo, but I don't think anybody's really a threat, if that makes sense. Although I think I said it last week, I am really intrigued by the Tsunoda to Aston Martin rumours for 2025 or 6, I think it was. I don't know if that's in place of Lance or if that's in place of Alonso if he decides to retire. But I will say this, unless Yuki Tsunoda shows insane development, I don't think Yuki Tsunoda is the driver I'd go for to replace Alonso. But Tsunoda to replace Stroll with a better number one driver, like an Alonso, somebody else, I could see that working quite nicely. But then you're relying on Lawrence Stroll letting his son go, which I'm not sure he will do. So 2 more then, super quickly. Do you think Sargent keeps his seat? Says Hunter Greenfield. If you listen to James Vowles, there's a very good chance. I think that the line he's giving at the moment is, so long as Sargent shows improvement and continues to develop, then he's going to be in that seat next year. I think if he doesn't, obviously they're going to look for a change, and maybe you'll look at a Mick Schumacher, maybe an Alex Palou, possibly even. The name's gone out of my head. Frederick Vesti. They might look at something like that. But at the moment, Williams are sort of saying this is all in Logan Sargent's hands. If he performs and continues to improve or improves and develops as a driver over the next few races, he will be in that car next year. But do I think he will? Yes. Now I said after last weekend's race reaction, I was concerned for Logan Sargent after the incident in the race, but I've since found out, obviously, as you'll have seen from the pinned comment, that was not his fault. That was a mechanical issue, so I'm not that concerned from now. So I think he will, but I think he'll really need to step his ass up next year, otherwise he'll be out very, very quickly. One more then, and somebody who's not asked a question. Let's see if we've got anybody. I'm not going to get to the cost cap, because if I mention it properly, I'll be off on one. No? I'm trying. There's a couple of questions, but I don't want to just ask from the same people all the time. But then, if you're interacting, I probably should. So, do you think Williams is really the sister team to Mercedes, since the last two driver changes have both come from Williams? Russell 2022, Bottas 2014. With how much is talked about Tauri Red Bull, says Vulcan. The last two drivers have both come from Williams. So Russell 2022 and Bottas the exception, aren't they? I think, is that what you're saying? They're the exception, Vulcan. I assume that's what you mean by that. So they're not a B team or a sister team to Mercedes. They are not in the same way that Alpha Tauri are, or whatever they'll be called next year. Tauri Alpha Rosso Boss, Hugo, whatever. They're not in the conventional sense of B team, but they have a close relationship with, obviously with them being power unit suppliers. You've also got to think about James Vowles' relationship with Toto Wolff as well. So there's a connection there. Sounds crazy, but that sort of thing does work out. They know each other well, so they're going to have those conversations. So they're not a B team and a sister team, but I think even with things like the cost cap in place, if Mercedes can come along and say to Williams, hey, look, Frederick Vesti, let's say Vesti wins F2 this year. Hey, look, Frederick has just won F2. He's a quick driver. We'd like to give you a whopping great discount on your engines. Will you put him in your car? That's where that changes. But at the same time, and I think it may have been in chat, it may have been in the comment section of a video, and it's a really interesting point. We have to remember as well, and this is kind of building on your point, Vulcan, Sargent is a Williams junior. How does it look if Williams bring their junior through and then drop him a year later? Would you not think, maybe looking at how Williams tend to operate with that sort of thing, maybe a couple of years before you make that decision, and then drop him if you need to, or give him a third season if he's earned it? So don't forget Sargent's come from the junior program, or is a junior, an academy driver at Williams, because that might have an impact on what their decision is. So Del says, if Sargent isn't good enough, what's the problem? I guess I've kind of just answered that with one example, I suppose, in that if he's a Williams junior, maybe they will give him another year. They've invested the time and the money in him, give him one more year. But do I think Logan Sargent's an amazing driver? No, not really. Do I think he's terrible? No. He's got potential, but he's going to have to start showing that potential, because, and I'll always make this point, a lot of talent out there. A lot of young drivers who are getting close, if not already there, to being ready to be in F1, and teams like Williams are where those drivers will start. So, a Williams might take a Vesti, an Alpha might take a Porsche, Alpha Tauri might go with a Lawson. These young drivers are going to end up in teams like that. So Sargent needs to step it up and needs to show James Vowles and the whole of the Williams team between now and the end of the season that he can do it, he can continue to improve, and he can develop nicely, and that he will be better in 2024 on top of that. Or they can be confident, or whatever, that he can be better in 2024. Otherwise, it's not going to be long before Vesti's in that car. Because, again, with that connection to Mercedes, they're going to want Vesti in. Like they did with George Russell. 3 years at Williams before promoting him to Mercedes, if that's the way they go, if he's good enough. It's really interesting. But Sargent is the interesting one for me. I think if there's going to be a change this season on the grid, I still think it'll be at Williams or AlphaTauri, with AlphaTauri being the most likely. But I would... I was just going to say, what would I do? Keep or let go? Let me know, chat. If you were James Vowles, what are you doing with Sargent at the end of the season? Do you replace him or do you keep him? Keep or replace? It's not quite Snog, Marry, Kill, but I went with Snog. Why not? But yeah, it's keep or replace with Logan Sargeant if you were James Vowles. If I was James Vowles, I'd do exactly what James Vowles is doing. Give him to the end of the season, then make a decision. Because the other thing to remember as well, from a Williams point of view, they don't need to rush this. There is no rush at all. They can wait until after Abu Dhabi because the seats are filling up. So there's a lot of drivers who want to be in F1. They could have their pick of 4, 5, 6 drivers. So give him to the end of the year. That's not what you think it is. Give it to the end of the year. See how he gets on. And then if he's not developed enough, then look at other drivers or keep him on if you think he's been good enough. So there's no panic. Williams could take the time over this one. They could have their pick of a lot of drivers at the end of the year. So I based on now, I'd be surprised if they get rid of him, but at the same time, if he starts binning it every weekend, they might have no choice. So super quickly then, Random says keep, Valentine says keep, Williams says keep, Mickey says I would replace him, Irene says keep, Rocket says keep, Lee says replace, more actually, Sighted Canvas says keep the consistency going, more people, Rufus saying keep, a lot of people saying keep, more than I thought actually, which does show there is a very big difference between a YouTube audience and a Twitter audience, or an X audience, or as it's called in my emails, X, formerly Twitter. Yeah, interesting. Hunter says keep as well, so there we go. And final point on this for I round up the stream, Dennis says Williams needs a driver that will stay with them for several years, not be taken back by Mercedes. Keeping Sargeant is better than taking Vesti for 1 or 2 years. Do you know what's a really good point in there as well? That's a good point, full stop. But do you know what else adds to that? Alex Albon. If a bigger team with a better car come knocking, his head's going to be turned. Sargeant, and that if you're replacing your, it's the point you've made, but also remember Albon might leave, so consistency. I'm not going to go around that again because I'd have just repeated myself as I like to do. But what Dennis said with a bit more. That's where we're going to leave it. But I am going to wrap it up there for today. I'm trying to work out what that comment is, but I don't know if I won't read it just in case. That is it for today. I wanted to keep these to a hard 90 minutes. I failed miserably, 1 hour and 40 minutes, but there you go. These things happen. It would be interesting to see where Williams went though. Sorry, it's in my head now where Williams would go if they did move Sargeant on. Would you go with a Schumacher or a Vesti, or would you look at a Palou, or would you go from experience? Interesting. Let me know in chat. I won't be able to read it because I'm going to round up now, but let me know in the comments as well what you think Williams will do next year. But also, if you're watching this as a VOD later, who do you think is going to win? Don't answer after Sunday because that's cheating. So no comments on Monday telling me who'll win because that cheats. That is it then for this stream. Super quickly, patrons, this has not been updated. There's a couple of monthly contributions that haven't cleared, so I will update this on Monday when the banks open up again and everything clears. So I don't want to take people out who have paid and it hasn't shown up yet. If that, you know what, it will be updated next week, so it's going to be a couple of days later, but I think the list is pretty much the same anyway. So thank you for your support. You can support the channel on Patreon, by the way, at patreon.com/F1word if you want to support me a bit more longer term. There's a sentence in there somewhere in English. You can also support the channel through Super Chats, through Streamlabs and all of that business as well. And you can through PayPal too, if that is your thing. Don't forget to subscribe as well. It really does help the channel out, as does a like. 124 likes, 221 of you still here. So let's try to get to 130, 140 likes before I round off the stream completely. That would be absolutely amazing. And right now, that really does help the channel, and it could do with every bit of boost it could get at the moment. But yeah, that's a story for another day. I'll see you tomorrow for the race reaction, about 5 p.m-ish, 5:30ish, depending on red flags if there are any in the race. And hopefully we have an absolute cracker tomorrow. But as always, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word. And until next time, goodbye.